going on, everybody? Today I am with Kat Hammer of... What's up? How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for coming in. We were literally just joking. We were talking about how you were saying how's Emma, and I was literally just saying how she's like super excited. She was saying that I'm super excited to have you in because I'm going to know you because I am so interested in all the dietitian stuff. Like, I'm such a nerd where now I'm like looking into the back of everything. So super excited to have you here. So I guess tell everybody like who you are, where you're from, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So my name's Kat Hammer. I'm a sports dietitian. I'm originally from Northeast Philly. I'm currently the head sports dietitian at the University of Pennsylvania and also the owner of Hammer Fuel Sports Nutrition, which is a virtual private practice. I do some stuff in person, like group presentations and things like that, but mostly virtual counseling and education for athletes really all over the country, from the middle school, high school, collegiate, and professional level. So kind of the whole gamut there.
That's awesome. I feel like it's a really great time to like kind of be in that business. I feel like athletes now more than ever are kind of trying to really like be specific about what they do and trying to like, I guess really at its core is just everyone's so competitive, right? Like,
absolutely.
Trying to get every little edge they can, right?
Yeah, in sports, like it has evolved so much even since like we were in high school or college, just with like all of like the stats, the video, everything that you can see. So it's broken down way more. So like we can really look to get maybe like 1% to 2%, and like some of the areas that we pull from, right, are strength training, nutrition, mental performance. So like this is a super hot area right now. People are just really looking to invest in it.
So did you like, we went to school together and all that stuff. I know you're a really good athlete. Like, is that kind of the genesis of where you got into this? Like, were you trying yourself to kind of find a way and then you kind of like fell in love with all that?
Yeah, for sure. So in high school, I knew I wanted to play softball in college. And then like in the recruiting process, I was like, what are the little things that I can do to just try to get a little bit better? And I started focusing more on diet. And then I was like, wait, this is really cool. And I think I might want to pursue this. And then once I got into college and I was studying nutrition and I learned that sports nutrition was a field, I was like, I'm sold. This is it.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. It is cool, like that moment it just hit, right?
Yeah.
So you knew exactly what to do. So how did you go like with getting into Penn and everything? So like, did you start off there, or is that where you originally started?
So basically, to become a dietitian, there's a lot of steps. So you have to do undergrad, then you have to do a master's, and then you have to do a dietetic internship.
Oh my God,
so
that's a whole entire school right there.
Yeah, so it takes about like 6 years. So I did my undergrad, then I went to the University of Tampa for my master's. And while I was there, I was working with the Pittsburgh Pirates, their minor league affiliates in...
They're all down there, right?
Yeah, in Bradenton. So it's about like an hour south of Tampa. So I worked with them for 2 seasons. So that was really how I got my foot in the door. And then after that, I had to complete my dietetic internship. I went to Virginia Tech, so I was kind of moving all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And then COVID hit right when I finished my internship. So I moved back to PA, and then the job at Penn opened, and I ended up getting it. So I've been there.
Tampa's cool. Two of my kids that I coached, Calvary High School CIO legends, Tom and Joe, go to Tampa right now. So shout out them. I know for a fact they are not listening, but I will send them this clip, all right? But yeah, that's awesome. So you got to jump around and everything. So, and then you got into Penn. I mean, when you got into Penn, like, did you apply to be the head, or was it something where you got in and then you kind of like worked your way up?
So when I got the job, I was hired as like an assistant part-time.
Okay.
And then 2 years after that, I became head. They like kind of changed the department, and I got the head position. So I've been there in that specific role for 2 years, a little over 2 years, but like in total about 5 years at this point.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy. I didn't realize too, we were talking before this. So you said you're kind of like, I don't know what the term would be, not taken care of, but what would it be, like you're in charge of? What would the term be?
So I like oversee.
Yeah, oversee. That'd be a better term. I don't know. I didn't want to be like, you own these kids. But over 1,000 athletes, right?
Yeah. So we have 33 Division I teams.
That is insane.
That's it's just shy of 1,000 athletes. So you see a lot of different things.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. So I'm involved with sports my whole life. I coach football. My brothers are in like kind of high level, like they go to St. Joe's and they're in high level sports like that. But I cannot imagine in college, like, how that process goes. So like one question I had, and we were talking about this before, but like, so when you have that many kids and that many teams, like, are you breaking this down where you're like, hey, the football kids should do this. Hey, the swimming team should do this. Hey, the field hockey team should do this. Like, how does that process work?
So it's a little difficult to navigate because just as one person, you can't really give the type of care that you want to every single individual and every single team. So kind of the way that I structure it is the teams that already have more buy-in or are willing to buy in are the teams that are going to get the most attention. And a lot of times those are our teams with really amazing winning records. They're just looking to continue success. And not to say that teams who maybe don't have winning records aren't as invested, but that's just kind of what I see. So I work really closely with like our lacrosse, both men's and women's lacrosse teams, wrestling, football. Those are really big ones for me. But yeah, they can teams can request certain things. So I could literally do essentially nutrition plans for the whole team, or I can come in and give team talks and educations on specific topics, and then individuals can meet with me as well. So this kind of ranges so much.
I'd imagine, because I just think like I always try to think of it myself, but I'm just thinking like even myself, like I would feel like from a diet standpoint, like what I would need and what like someone else on my team could be completely different, like completely different body types, completely different like roles on the team, and that sort of thing. So I could see how that would all be like so changing. And then I guess I would assume you guys have pretty good facilities and all that stuff there, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So the Ivy League is very interesting because it's not like in Alabama or like Florida or something.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, where like the stadiums are always packed and stuff. So in the Ivy League, we're pretty much like a non-revenue generating conference.
Right.
So all of the money that we get for facilities and just athletics in general is going to come through endowments or donations. Yeah. So we're pretty limited on some of the facilities. However, we did just open a couple of new facilities this past year. So like we're trying to keep up as much as possible. But
it's
Ivy
hard.
League,
it's such an ever changing field, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And ironically, like I was just at the basketball at the Palestra the other day for the judge game and all that stuff, but I was explaining, like, I had a couple of these dudes, so, like, without going too far down the rabbit hole, I play Gaelic football with these dudes from Ireland, so I'm like, yo, you gotta come to Palestra. Like, this is one of the coolest events in the city, like, come check it out. And, of course, like, they ask, like infant questions. They're like, so who plays here? And I'm like, Penn.
Yeah.
And they're like, but they're not here right now. I'm like, no. I'm like, but, like, I was explaining to them kind of how, like, I would think and you might not even know this, but I would think that's probably the biggest games they have there. And they have a collegiate basketball team. Like, because the place is absolutely packed during the Palestra time. Like, it is nuts there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I could see where it's kind of tough. And it's just hard, I guess, when you're Ivy League and you have those kind of standards to be competing with the Alabamas and the big teams of the year. Plus, they get all the money they're making from a revenue standpoint that they can invest back into.
Yeah, and something also that's interesting that I think most people don't know, and I really didn't even know until I started working at Penn, is athletes at Penn cannot receive athletic scholarships.
That is quirky. Yeah.
So you're going to Penn for the education, so
you almost have to be an athlete that can apply, that can get in education-wise and get a scholarship education-wise and also play sports.
So basically, you're a smart individual who's also good at a sport.
Yeah, that is crazy. And I'm sure and we're going down the rabbit hole here, but I'm sure the whole NIL thing did not help the cause there either, where it's so hard to get in and someone's like, I could go. I would think back in the day, like you'd have some athletes that went there that were like, hey, I could get a great education and maybe I could play sports at the next level. Whereas now, like if these kids are getting paid, they might be like, hey, I want to get my money while I can. I'm going to go to this other school.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then you'll have people who like really are, the most elite, who are making Olympic teams and like really competing at high levels outside of the college space. So it just like, you have some people who are just really good at sports, or some people who are like really, really competitive. So you have a wide range there.
So how are you, like, from a competitive standpoint, like, I guess, like, are you taking people that are from their diets are bad from a standpoint and trying to change it to make them, like, more healthier? Or are you trying to gear it towards, like, hey, you're this athlete, you should be doing, like, more carbs or more protein, or what is that? Like, how does that work?
So the first thing that you always want to do is just, like, kind of assess where they're at and then assess, like, where they're willing to go.
I think that would be hard in general, like, asking these, because you couldn't pick a worse time in, I think, a person's life to get them committed to a regimen of eating in college where, like, your hormones, I'm sure, are everywhere. You're running all the time. You're doing all this sports. You're burning all these calories. And then you're like, I don't want to eat this. You know what I mean?
And then you're going out on the weekends.
Yeah, exactly. Oh
so, like, that's huge, too. And, like, a lot of conversations I'm having, they're like, I'm doing so great throughout the week. And I'm like, okay, well, what do Saturday and Sunday look like for you? Yeah. And, like, you have to have those conversations with them where you're like, I was a college athlete, too. I know what you guys are doing on the weekends. But, like, if you really want to, like, hit these goals, like, you have to figure out, like, if that's really what you want to dedicate to.
Yeah, hand up, I am that guy. So I do that myself. Like, I'm so good during the week. Like, we have a couple weddings this year, and then we have ours in the fall. So, like, I'm trying to get back in shape. And I've, like, lost and gained weight my whole life, like, to a crazy level. So I know what to do. But, like, that's my issue is, like, when a Saturday comes and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to, like, have, like, a quote-unquote cheat day. And then my problem is once I start drinking or whatever, I start partying, I'm like, all right, like it doesn't matter now. You know what I mean? And then that's that point where that clicks in your head, that's when you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because I'll waste an entire week of good stuff, and I have like a slower metabolism, so I will literally I'll lose like a couple pounds, and then I will gain it all back in a day, like within probably 3 or 4 hours.
It's really difficult. Yeah, it really is to kind of stick to something. But like my whole approach with the athletes that I work with, both at Penn and then in my business, and honestly myself too, is like choosing things that are going to be sustainable for you. So like a lot of people try like 75 hard, and that is like, in my opinion, it's so aggressive. Like you're not going to be able to sustain that. And like if you're saying that I'm only doing this for 75 days, well, what's going to happen after that? Like you might retain some good habits, which like is the goal. It's not to retain all of those habits, right? So like when I'm working
brick by brick.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm working with people, it's like, what are you willing to do right now? And let's just start like habit stacking. So like get really good at this one thing, and then let's add something onto it, versus being like, you're not eating any processed food now. Like that's, you can't say that.
Yeah.
Like, people can't do that unless you're like a super elite athlete,
you,
top like 0.5%, right? Like,
yeah, it's almost like your skill is so high that you're like down a peg. Like if your skill's a 90, well now you're an 85 because you're -5 for nutrition. But there's some dude out there that's an 85 that's +5 because he's doing all that kind of stuff. And it's like, we were saying this before, but like I feel like once you get to that high level, Division I, like people don't realize because they were so good at high school, no one was close to them, that it's like, oh wow, now there's a bunch of U's out there. So the margins now are very like razor sharp. So
totally,
you can't lose anything. Like, and I can't imagine like, it's got to be weird. Like, I don't think you realize it. And like, I realize it now when I'm older, but when you're younger, you're like, oh, like I remember I used to play football and I'd have like pizza rolls or something before the game.
For sure.
Like it didn't even matter. You know what I mean? I was just like, I'm hungry. I'm eating this. You know what I mean? Whereas it's got to be pretty cool, I think, for you. Like, do you get into people where it's like they had those sort of habits, now they're kind of cleaning them up, and I feel like it all is like a rise at one time. Like they might be putting in more work in their sport to get their diet sorted, and they have that sort of success.
Yeah. And it can be with somebody who is, you know, already doing like a decent job, and then you're just like really kind of maximizing it, or it could be with somebody like on the totally opposite end who unfortunately has like an eating disorder, right? And like
I'm sure that kind of throws a whole wrench in everything that you're doing. Yeah.
So I work with a lot of individuals who are either currently struggling with it or recovering from it, and that's like, you know, a whole nother aspect of it that's really difficult to
it's super tough
work with. But then also, like, if you're an individual who's competing at a really high level and you are really struggling to just get food in your body, like you're asking your body to do like so much and you're not giving it what it needs. So like when that's happening, you're in like a constant breakdown, and at some point like you're gonna fully break. Right?
Yeah.
And that can mean a variety of
collapse,
things.
right? Yeah.
Like it can mean bone injuries. It can mean like other soft tissue injuries. It can mean like mentally you're going to break down. It can mean that like now your electrolytes are so far off where like it's actually unsafe for you to do any sort of exercise.
Crazy.
So.
Yeah, that's crazy. I always think that's a huge thing. Like, and the older I get, the more I realize it. Like, just how connected what you eat and what you put in your body is to the mental side too. Like, I think everybody thinks like, oh, if I eat healthy today, like I'm gonna lose weight or whatever. And I think that's kind of like the goal behind them eating healthy, as opposed to like mentally, and especially in such a turbulent time in your life, like you're in college, like you have all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
Mentally, you're already cooked, and then you're eating all these bad things. Whereas like, I think that could be a huge thing on the mental side. Like, do you see that with people where like they're like, oh, this is crazy. Like you started eating healthy and now you feel a lot better.
And maybe it's like eating healthy, and maybe it's just like eating an adequate amount of calories. Because like think about like if you have a day where like, you know, you missed breakfast and then lunch was like cut short, or you didn't get to eat lunch and you don't eat until dinner, like working that day, you probably had like a ton of brain fog. You may have a headache. You might not feel very good, right? And then again, like applying it to athletes, if you're doing that and then you're also taxing your body, you have a 2 to 3 hour really tough practice, like, and then you got to go home and do homework, and then people are crushing like Red Bulls and Monsters and stuff. It's like
a lot of caffeine.
Yeah, you are just really destroying
What's like, without
your body.
putting you on the spot, like what's your opinion on all those drinks and stuff like that?
So
to set the stage here, I have someone in my family, I'm not gonna name who, really good athlete that crushes them. He does like probably 1,000. He's insane.
1,000 milligrams per day.
Yeah, where it's like, yo, you gotta chill.
Yeah.
But it's just that age, I feel like, and college too, I'm sure they're like, just caffeine's the answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll come at it from like 2 different angles. So like number one, for college athletes, In most energy drinks, there are banned substances. So taurine is banned. Guarana seed extract is a form of caffeine that's like twice as potent as caffeine and not regulated.
Like they're like the garbage can of all like there's processing chemicals and all the processed stuff, but I feel like the energy drinks are like the people drinking this don't give a shit. We're putting whatever we want here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So for college athletes, it is actually very dangerous to be drinking them because they could potentially test positive for
you have like a
substance.
ban list, like, yo, don't ever touch this? Okay.
Pretty much. And then for like the general public, if you have an energy drink like a couple times a week, is it going to kill you? No. Is it the best thing you could do? No. And also I would encourage you to think about, if you feel like you constantly need an energy drink, are you sleeping enough? And are you eating enough? This
is my take on it, and I do drink them here and there. I'm like of the mindset, like I like coffee more than anything, but I am like, this is where I think it's all placebo. Like I just think when you have one, you mentally feel like, oh, I'm going to be better.
Totally.
And that's where it really affects you. But I'll switch mine up where like I don't like I know some people have the same drink every day. I don't like doing that because I think in my head, like, oh, I'm having a new one. Like, it's going to affect me more. Like, I don't have any tolerance to it. It's like, it's not like not drink. It'd be like drinking, like, oh, today I'm going to have liquor. Today I'm going to have vodka. Like, you never have the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's tough with them. Like, I also don't think, like, I'll have them here and there, but I don't think, like, from an athletic standpoint, it's that valuable. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like I could crush, like I still play sports a lot. Like, I do gal football, soccer. Like, I don't think I'd want to crush, like, a Celsius and then go run, like, a couple miles playing soccer. Like, I don't think I'm running faster or anything of that nature. You know what I mean?
Caffeine does have benefits for performance. It can help with, like, reduce, or I guess increase time to fatigue, so you have like less muscle fatigue as quickly, and then it can also reduce like ratings of perceived exertion. So like basically like the difficulty of like a certain workout, if you have caffeine, potentially could feel not as difficult as if you didn't have caffeine. So like it does have performance benefits, but to a point, right? Because caffeine can be helpful until it's not, and you start to feel jittery and you start to not feel good, and then it just sends off a cascade of other things.
My feeling on it too is I feel like your heart rate goes up. So if you're in something where it's almost like high intensity, where like you're going from running to stopping, well, that whole process of getting your heart down and up, I feel like the floor's gone up now because you already have this pump. Like even when I go to the gym to lift, like I don't like doing, like if I do anything like deadlift or squatting, I hate having the energy drink because it's like I do one set and I'm like losing my breath.
Totally.
Whereas like if I didn't do that, like I could just catch my breath after a minute and I'm like back to where I was.
Totally. So it just goes off of like individual preference, and like as always with like any supplement or anything like that, you want to go with like the lowest effective dose. So like if you have 50 milligrams of caffeine and you're like feeling it, why would you push it to 100, right? So like for me, I am like pretty good at about 200. Once I hit past 200, I start to like feel a little bit jittery, and then like Phil, my fiance who's here, can have like 2,000 milligrams.
I'm the same
I'm
way.
exaggerating, but like
I'm the same
he has
way.
so much caffeine, and
I have like a Whoop now right here, and it asks me every day, like when you wake up, it's like, oh, how much caffeine did you have? And I'll be like, I lie, I say 2.
You feel like guilty sliding it.
Yeah, I'm like, I know, I'm lying. I'll be like, I don't even really know. The worst is like after you drink, it'd be like, oh, did you drink last night? Like how many drinks? And I always like send it to my friends. It caps out at 10. I'm like hitting the 10 button. I'm like, it was more than 10, but we're just gonna leave it at that. But yeah, it's funny. How do you think that all affects like dietary stuff too, like drinking? Like, I guess is that a more general than an athlete question? Because I feel like with bare knowledge of it, when I was younger that age, you recover faster, so it's not as big of a detriment. But I mean, obviously, there's some people that do it and are good. Like, obviously, we're not promoting that, but they can figure out a way to do it. So, is it just your age? I think, and like, I guess your age, you're easier to metabolize it.
Typically, when you're younger, like to a certain age, like your body's just more resilient in some ways, and then as you get older, it becomes kind of less tolerant of some things. So yeah, kind of stinks as you grow up. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So as far to like athletes, like do you have people that are trying to like either like have the process of, because I do this for myself personally, but like do you have people like, hey, I'm trying to gain weight and lose muscle, or sorry, gain muscle, lose weight. Right? How do you guys approach that? Because I feel like at its core they're counterintuitive.
Yes. So the way that I like to approach it in like that scenario, people will be like, I want to lose weight but gain muscle, and I want them to actually like not think of losing weight. I just want them to think
they're kind of like, I feel like opposites, like in a way, because if you're gonna you just want to increase protein and obviously do all that stuff, but there comes like that, obviously if you're eating more and stuff, you're going to have more calories, right?
Yeah. And you also need to be probably in most cases in a slight calorie deficit, but you don't want to push that deficit too much, because if you're in too much of a deficit, then you can't build or maintain muscle mass and you can't get the type of body composition changes that you want. So it's really like when somebody comes to me with that, I want them to think more so of like body composition changes and gaining muscle versus like losing weight. And when you think of it in the way that I just described, like that's going to help with that appearance of weight loss, which is fat loss.
Right. And it's kind of hard, like, is it really possible to like lose weight and keep muscle? Like, because from what I understand, when you lose weight, you're going to lose muscle in some sense. Like there's no way to kind of count, like get that sorted, right?
Totally. So I would say it kind of depends. And if you're trying to do something fast, then it's not probably going to go in the direction that we want.
Yeah.
And then also just going back to like when I'm working with an individual who's going with that approach, like I'm telling them like we're only using the scale as a data point, not as like the goal, because you could potentially put on a lot of muscle.
I used to be like that so much too.
Yeah.
Like, and I just had, so I talked to somebody earlier, they have like I think it's called InBody, I want to say. It's like one of them where it like gauges your muscle too, which is cool because like I think even myself, like I just started the last month or two trying to lose weight, and the first couple of weeks, like I've been doing all kinds of crazy shit. Fasting, I have a cold tub, like all this bullshit, and I'm like, I'm running a lot more, I feel great, and then like I'll go on the scale and I'll be like, damn, I only lost like 3 or 4 pounds. But I can tell like in how I look, like my face specifically, like, oh, I lost weight.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like almost like bloating. I don't even fucking know.
It's bloating, and then it could potentially be like fat mass loss. So that's, again, like body composition change versus like the actual number on the scale. So that's when an in-body scan or body composition testing could be helpful, because we're still seeing change, but we're not just using the scale as that measurement, right? So we're seeing changes in fat mass and
people that you do use the scale for, kind of like to gauge these things. Do you have a strategy on when you do it? Because I feel like it's very different. Like you could weigh yourself like within 2 hours every day, and you'd be different weight all 2 hours.
For sure.
So I feel like, is that a strategy? Like I try to do when I wake up, but I feel like I only do that because it's when I weigh the less, and I like the number better than when I go to bed.
That really is like your true weight, right? Because that's going to be unaffected by things that you put in your body.
That makes sense.
So like what I say is, as soon as you wake up, use the bathroom, have minimal clothing on, get on the scale. That's going to be your true weight. Now, keeping in mind,
dehydrated probably too.
The biggest thing that's going to affect the scale is hydration status. So like a couple things to keep in mind is like if you are weighing yourself on a Saturday and every Friday night you guys do like a pizza night.
Okay.
Pizza is very high in carbohydrates and it's very high in sodium. Those two things are going to hold water in the body. So that next day, you're probably going to be a little bit heavier, but it's not necessarily like weight gain. It's that your body's retaining more water.
Okay.
Right?
Makes
so
sense.
like over the course of the week, should we just weigh ourselves once? No, because you might get an outlier. So I would say weigh yourself a couple times. If we plot it on a graph, we want to see either an upward trend or downward trend, depending on what direction.
And I kind of know a little bit. I feel like I could like get like, it always reminds me like when you hear someone, like when I used to like learn Spanish, I could hear like someone talk and I pick like a few words out of what they're saying.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're talking to me, I can kind of get the gist of a couple things. Like, so I take like in the morning now, I'll do like a salt and like electrolyte compound type thing. And for that reason, exactly, like I learned that like the salt is really what's holding all the water in, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So like you need that to do that. So I guess that would be a strategy too for all athletes, I think. And like you remember as a kid, like I remember there was always the one kid on my football team. He'd be like eating pickles before the game. And I'm like, yo, and then he told me, he's like, it's so I don't get cramps. And like in reality, you don't realize the math, but like you're getting cramps because you're dehydrated. Well, why do the pickles help? Because it helps you hold the water that you're taking in.
Yeah. And I actually, for athletes, when athletes cramp and they're like, get a banana. Well, banana is super high in potassium, and even though potassium,
fiber, right?
Yeah, but even though potassium is an electrolyte you lose through sweat, you lose significantly more sodium. So, like, if you're an athlete who's like cramping regularly, I would focus on higher sodium versus potassium.
Yeah. So this is one I always thought too, like it's a general one. So, like, what's your take on sodium? Like, I feel like does it get a bad rap publicly?
Yes.
That's what I agree. I'm gonna clip this and send this to my dad.
Yeah.
My dad and my mom are like. They're big, like, where it's I think, without getting too down the rabbit hole, I feel like that's like a big, I don't know, whatever food industry deal where it's like sodium's the bad guy because they're trying to point the gun at someone else away from someone who's actually the bad guy. But from what I understand, like, one, the things that made me feel good about it, it's a natural thing, right? Like, it's from the earth. And I just don't know, like, if you have excess sodium, like, what really happens? Is that detrimental? The quirky thing is, I feel like if you have excess anything, it's bad.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have hypertension, cardiovascular disease, anything like that, then yes, you should watch sodium. But if you are a generally healthy individual, having sodium, especially when you are a regular exerciser, is going to be helpful. So like when you're cooking your food at home, you definitely should salt it. If you're exercising a lot, you're what's called a salty sweater. You can see like like the salt ring on the hat or something.
Same thing. Yep.
Or your sweat rate is typically really high. You definitely should be supplementing with some type of electrolytes. But if you're somebody who's like, I don't know, you're only exercising like twice a week and your sweat rate's not really that high, you probably don't need to supplement with sodium. Right. But then the other thing is...
It's almost like if you could get it out.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing is if you're having mostly processed foods are typically going to be super high in sodium because it's used as a preservative.
Yeah, it seems like that's the scapegoat where it's like it's probably all the other chemicals in the processed food.
And if somebody, again, is just eating a ton of processed foods and they're doing all these things that aren't super great for their health, well, is it the sodium or is it like all the lifestyle factors? So.
Yeah, that's interesting. What is your take? I feel like this is another general, not a college athlete question, but so you see like these people doing these crazy, like all these diets and stuff where it's like, oh, I'm only going to eat meat or I'm only going to do this or that. Like, what is your opinion on some of them? I feel like it's like, I don't know, I just feel like at least the carnivore one, like I've had people that do it and tell me and I'm like, I just feel like it's bad that you're missing all these other nutrients. Like in any diet that you specifically are doing one thing, I feel like you're just deficit in another.
Yeah.
So it's, but at the same time, like if I guess your goal is to lose weight, like you're losing weight because you're deficient in all this other shit.
Yeah. So let me be very clear. If there's like a diet that is taking out any major food group, that's probably not a good diet, right? Okay. That's going to be super restrictive and it's probably going to miss out on a lot of vitamins and minerals or nutrients that we need. Now, if somebody is living a maybe not so healthy lifestyle and they're like, I want to make a change, carnivore seems like it would work for me, and they go from eating all this processed food to now eating like steak and burgers without the bun, obviously, and like all of these things that are more natural foods, fresh whole foods, even if they're not getting the vitamins and minerals through a lot of like fruits and vegetables and whole grains, they're probably still going to see some weight loss. And overall, it's probably going to be positive for them because they were eating all this processed stuff before. But like long term, is carnivore healthy for you? No, it's not, because you're missing out, like you said, on a ton of things. Yeah. So a lot of times when people do any of these like super kind of drastic diets, they lose weight either because they're in a calorie deficit or now they're choosing fresh whole foods, which like those things actually they can be positive. But like, again, you want to pick things that are going to be sustainable for you.
Right. No, it makes sense. I always think back, you'll laugh at this, but when we were at Westchester, I used to live at Ramsgate. I did like the keto thing for a while. I was like, it was trending then. I was like, oh, I'm going to do it and I'm going to try to lose weight. And I remember vividly, like after a week of no carbs, I was looking at like, and I don't even really like, scratches from ledger, but I don't really eat cheesesteaks in general. And I remember someone had a cheesesteak and I was like foaming at the mouth. And I still to this day remember, I'm like, oh my God. Or there'd just be bread. Like I lived with a bunch of other dudes and I would see the bread and I'd be like, fucking, I don't even really eat it that much.
Yeah.
Like bread itself isn't something, I have a ton of carbs. Like I guess that would be another good question for you. So as far as carbs go, like I feel like I have like a hit or miss relationship with them. I know they're like the core of fuel, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of carbs, like if I eat them, at least me specifically, like I feel like it's such a way for me to gain weight. Like a lot of carb things end up in me gaining weight and losing all the progress I made as opposed to it being like fuel. Yeah.
So potentially a couple reasons for that. Number one, like I kind of said earlier, carbs are going to hold more water in the body, so you may have some additional bloating.
Right.
That could be one reason. Another reason is if your diet is very high in simple carbohydrates, which are things that are basically lacking fiber, a carbohydrate that's lacking fiber, it's very easy to overeat those things because it's not as satiating. When you add fiber to something, it slows rate of digestion, so it is more satiating. It's almost like not as good.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Totally. Yeah, so think about like, for me personally, I actually don't really like brown rice. Right. I like white rice way more. But if you put the two in front of me... I don't mind either,
but I would prefer white.
If you put the two in front of me, I would definitely eat more of the white rice because it tastes better. And
okay, so that one is lacking the fiber, like you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So a lot of times people are gonna kind of overeat those simple carbohydrates.
So it's kind of like a hack where like if you ate the same amount of white or the one lacking it and the one with it, you would probably feel more full with the one with it as opposed to the one without, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then like when people are dieting, we always talk about high protein, and that's for a couple of different reasons. So one, if we're dieting and are in a calorie deficit and we're trying to preserve muscle mass and not lose muscle mass, we want to try to have as much protein as possible. That's number one. Number two is protein is the nutrient that has what's called like the highest thermic effect of food, which basically requires the most amount of calories to actually digest it.
Okay.
So it requires more calories and also has a really slow digestion rate.
And
so
in my opinion, I'll put this on the record, it is the best one. I love protein.
That's what Phil would say too.
Neither here nor there.
But like think about if you had like 2 bowls of white rice versus like 2 chicken breasts.
Yeah.
Which one would keep you fuller longer? The chicken.
100%,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking we're laughing. One of my boys, he's real Italian. He sent me like some Italian sandwich, and it had like tomatoes and like mozzarella and some stuff on it, but didn't have any meat. And we're like, dude, why are you sending us a diet sandwich right now? Like,
this isn't a real sandwich.
Protein. Yeah. I'm like, dude, are you lacking protein or something? And he's like, nah, this is just what we do. I'm like, that is wild that you eat diet sandwiches. But I guess from the college side of things now, like it's for athletes right now, how are you guys kind of like weaponizing carbs? Like, is there kids that are lacking in that area? Like they don't have enough? Because I don't know. I feel like it's very specific to the person. Like it's like what you like or not. You don't realize you're eating them, right? So like, are you trying to get them more into those like the fiber carbs as opposed to the other ones, or just carbs in general?
Yeah.
Like,
so like this is where it becomes like very nuanced. So like what our conversation just was kind of talking more about like just general, like right? General like healthy individuals or active individuals. But then when you're talking about like high level or elite athletes, about 50 to 60% of their diet actually should be carbs.
Right, because they're burning it, right? Like
that's the main
so
energy
if they're not
source.
burning the carbs, they're burning something else, right? Like
right.
Either protein or fat or whatever it may be.
Correct.
Okay, so that would make sense. So you find like a level like, yo, you're burning X, this is how many carbs you need?
Yeah, so it depends on type of exercise or sport, I should say. It depends on the position. And then it depends on like individual needs. So like think about I'll use maybe like lacrosse, field hockey, soccer example. So like obviously your goalie doesn't need as many calories or as many carbs as like a midfielder, right? On the field, the midfielders are probably going to need the most amount of carbohydrates because they're doing the most amount of running. Yeah. So, but then maybe you have a midfielder who actually doesn't feel so good when they have like 55% of their calories coming from carbs. So that we can cut it back a little bit. And then to the other thing you said, should it be simple carbs or complex carbs? Well, now it gets, really dialed in with like our simple carbs should be closer to time of training or time of exercise.
Yeah, that's a whole nother variable, I'd imagine, right? Like, so how... For the general person, right? Like I play soccer, I play Gallic. Like let's say we have a big game Sunday, right? Okay, so leading up to that, like Saturday going into Sunday, like what would be the proper way to eat carbs and everything? Because in that, it's more of the sense it's like soccer, it's like lacrosse, like you're running back and forth the whole time, right? What do you think would be the best strategy, like carb-wise for that? Like eat it before the day before?
So you only have like one game per week?
Yeah, so and it's one game and it's one big like running basically. Yeah.
So in that case, I'd probably do like the day before slightly higher carb at meals. So like if you typically do like, I don't know, like a fistful of carbs at a meal, maybe we're doing like a fistful and a half or something like that.
Yeah, so nothing like out of pocket.
Nothing super
nuts,
crazy.
Right? Okay.
But for athletes who like, for maybe a high school athlete or a college athlete who is maybe competing 2 to 3 times a week, I would actually have your carb intake high across the entire week.
So you're just constantly going and yeah, Correct. It makes sense. Because like for me personally, like I always like think of this like if I had a big, like if we were going to run or something, like say you're a soccer player and you have a game or whatever, like I don't know how good it would be just physically if it felt like, oh, I'm going to have a bunch of pasta before the game. Like,
yeah. So
you know what I mean?
We like always, I know in high school, we're like, okay, we're going to do a pasta party for like a big like swim meet or a big game or something like that. And like, actually, that's probably one of the worst things that you can do because it
takes forever to digest it, right?
It takes a long time to digest. It causes bloating, right? Because carbs are going to hold water. And we probably don't need that much carbs if we're going to be exercising for, I don't know, 60 minutes or less, depending on what sport we're playing. So yeah, and the other big thing to keep in mind is like leading up to like a competition, a game, whatever it is, like we never want to try something different. We always want to make sure we know exactly what we're doing and how it affects us.
Right.
Because the last thing we want is to have stomach or GI issues while we're playing or competing.
Yeah,
like,
trust me.
I'm sure everybody's experienced that.
Yeah,
it's like probably the worst thing you can
I
experience.
always laugh this crazy story, but when I was at Judge, they got the turf field. And literally, I was sick. I had the stomach bug, and my dad, like, being a hard-ass, like, you're going, like, and I switched from, like, O-line to tight end, so it was, like, my first year and I was actually doing the 7-on-7s because like all the non-linemen go, and they're cutting the ribbon on the field, and he's like, "You're going, you can't miss it." Like, so I had the stomach bug. I'm there. I'm running around. I literally vividly remember this. I was throwing up in my mouth and swallowing it. So that I couldn't, I was like, I'm not throwing up on this field. They just cut the ribbon.
They'll kill
and I
you.
remember my dad, like, bro, I think he thought I was kidding. Like, maybe I was hungover or something.
Yeah.
And like I was like, no, like, literally. And I always remember that, like, being sick there. Like, luckily, I didn't have too much experience, like, getting sick. But I remember people throwing up a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's just what is your body doing when it throws up when you're running like that? Like,
I mean, it's just that your body like can't handle it at that time. When
it's just had enough. There's not like a scientific reason. It's just like we're out.
Well, when you're basically when you're exercising, like blood flow is actually going to go away from your GI tract, so like things aren't getting digested or like basically handled in the same way that it would if you and I are just sitting here kind of resting. The blood flow needs to prioritize like those working muscles. So like your GI tract, if you don't properly digest things prior to exercise, is going to be pretty messed up. So like.
I always remember
like
too the people that would do like pre-workout or something, or like they would take their protein before that. I guess they're probably the ones that are throwing up.
Yeah. Like people tell me that they have a protein bar before they train, and I'm like, that's actually so counterintuitive. We don't want a protein bar. We want like a high carb bar or something like that.
So for protein and intake and stuff like is that beneficial, I guess, after, right, when you're in recovery?
After.
Is there like a strategy? Do you guys take like, like right after, an hour after, the night of? Like, is there things like that where it's like, I guess it just depends. I would think your body, from what I know, and I have a very general idea of it, when you're trying to gain muscle, it's basically the breaking of your muscle cells. Yeah,
so your muscle fibers are going to tear a little bit when you're exercising.
I was going to say that too. I thought I was wrong
Close.
for some reason. But anyway, you break them, and then the protein and all that, whatever supplementation you're taking, is the process of repairing the new one, and that's when you're gaining it, right?
Yeah. So basically, like when your muscle fibers break down, you basically want to get enough nutrients like protein in afterwards so that you can rebuild that tissue so that when it's exposed to that same stimulus the next time, it doesn't break down as quickly. So like think about strength training. Like you don't want to keep lifting the same weight for 6 months, right? You want to be able to see progress to actually show that that muscle growth is happening.
Right.
Does that kind of make sense?
No, 100%. That's the one fear, like, from playing football and stuff that we did, because we were a lot in the gym, like, trying to get stronger. And it is a weird time, I feel like, even high school and college, because, like, simultaneously you are getting stronger, but also, like, you're just growing up and getting bigger and maturing. So it's kind of happening, like, all in one motion.
Totally. And, like, especially for females, too, but especially males between, like, the ages of, like, really like college athletes or like even high school too, like you need to do very little to gain muscle because your levels of testosterone are going to favor muscle growth and development. I had a professor in my master's program who said like males at that age, like you sneeze and grow. Like you just like your muscles are going to grow if you just feed your body a little bit.
I feel like there's some people that can't do it though. Like I have some of my boys that are like, I always make the comparison, but like they'll be like, oh, like they're 130 pounds soaking wet, and no matter what they do, they can't get bigger. And I'm like, I have the opposite problem. I'm like, I will, like you said, I'll sneeze and eat and gain like 5 pounds.
Yeah.
So like for me, losing weight is as hard as it is for them to gain weight. Like what is that? I guess genetics?
Yeah, genetics, metabolism and things like that. Like my brother is built very different than me. He's like 6 foot, and in high school, he was like 6'2", or is he 6'2" now? Yeah. Like 6 foot 6'2", and like maybe 160 pounds. So he was like super lean and
I'm sure he's
lanky.
going hard. Like, and that's, I think people like, especially generally, like they like kind of dismiss how much some people really are trying. Like I have some of my boys that are like, they're eating like 4,000 calories a day, mass gainers, all this stuff. And it's like, dude, they just cannot put on weight. Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes a really long time. And what you need to do is just like, I say like keep nudging your body in that direction and try to do it as healthy as possible. Like people will be like a pizza a day, and like that's not necessarily like what I would recommend.
I remember when I was at Judge, this one boy used to have a rotisserie chicken for lunch every day.
Yeah.
Trying to gain weight.
Yeah. But like you do need to keep feeding your body. Like it takes time and takes a ton of consistency. But a lot of times when I'm working with, not saying this about everyone, but a lot of times when I'm working with high school athletes who are like, I just can't gain weight, and I look at their diet, like they're not being consistent.
Yeah.
They maybe one day they eat 4,000 calories, but the next day they're eating like 1,500, and you're like, that's
I'm sure those type of people, their bodies are burning calories, so they got to figure it out. Do you guys have a strategy like supplement wise where you guys are at, like as far as protein and any of the other supplements, I guess?
Break it down a little more.
Like as far as like, so you have a person coming in, right, they're athletic, they're trying to do like, are you like, hey, you should do this protein and maybe like this something else, like whether it be like, I don't know, like, I don't really know. I guess protein would be a good idea.
Yeah, so the There's different levels to nutrition. So like you've probably seen that pyramid where it's like
the old school food
nutrition
triangle.
Or no, so it's like nutrition at the bottom, and then it's like macronutrients, and then it's like quality of food, and then it's like supplements all the way at the top. Like supplements is basically like the last level that you kind of want to touch on. So like if an individual comes in and their diet is not good, then I'm probably not recommending supplements outside of like protein powder, because like yes, that's a supplement, but it's just an extra source of protein.
The one good thing too, I think, about protein, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you can't, if you have too much protein, like you just get rid of it, right? Like there's no such thing as excess.
So it's kind of nuanced. Like if you have excess protein, your body can only use so much at a time, specifically for muscle growth and repair.
Right.
There's other things that your body can do with protein, and like one of the things like is to potentially store it as fat. Okay. Typically you're not.
I used to have that fight all the time because like a lot of my boys would be taking it to gain weight, and I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to lose weight and just not keep the muscle I have. So I used to only like I would never do a mass gainer like them boys would do. I feel like it was just a ton of calories, and then the same thing I'm taking.
If you're doing a mass gainer, I would highly encourage somebody to like try to get those calories through food. That's going to provide way more benefit. But just basically going back to the supplements, like let's say somebody is doing a good job with their nutrition, then we can start to add some supplements in, and like right away creatine. Yeah. If you're an athlete or a non-athlete, you should be taking creatine. Creatine has so many benefits. Like I have my dad on it for like.
Yeah, that was literally one of my questions I had for you. Like I used to think that I used to ironically, going off the same thing I was just saying, I used to not want to do creatine. When I was in high school, like they would tell us like our people, and we had like no nutritional. Mm-hmm. We had like the gym guys that were like, lift more weight. Yeah. So they used to be like, oh, they're on creatine. And from what I understood, like you would kind of lose it if you stopped taking it. I think it's something to do with the water retention, right?
So when you take creatine, it's going to help with, let's talk specifically about strength training, like basically pushing more reps per set. So if you can deadlift 250 pounds for 3 reps before creatine, you might be able to very quickly get 4 or 5 reps at that same weight, because the energy that you need to lift that weight very quickly is going to be fueled by creatine. Okay. So if you are taking creatine and you're seeing these performance gains and it's really going well, and then you stop taking creatine for whatever reason, you don't lose those gains, but you can't continue to gain at the same rate, if that makes sense. Okay. But when you take creatine, when it gets into your muscle cells, it's going to pull water in. So you hold on to slightly more water. So like somebody of like my size might gain 2 pounds. Right. Somebody of your size might gain 2.5 to 3 pounds. It's not anything really significant. So once you stop taking it, you might see that weight go away because you're. Yeah.
So I'm going to get on it, and then I have a wedding in 3 weeks. I'm going to get right off. Hop on, lose a couple pounds.
So the thing, when you take creatine, it can help with lean mass or muscle mass. Okay. So like that's another reason that so many people should be taking it. It can help with soft tissue injury prevention and recovery. It can help with cognitive function. It's like so beneficial.
I get it all. Like my Instagram algorithm's like 1/4 that, like 1/4 sports, like another 4th real estate, like, but I get a lot where it's like it helps you mentally too, like somehow, right?
Yes. So it's helpful for cognitive function, and both like now and then potentially like things later in life, like delaying onset or severity of like dementia, Alzheimer's and things like that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy how many things, like how like nuanced the body is, and like how many different directions you could go, like based off whether you do this or that.
Yeah. And genetics, like at the very like most basic foundation, right? Like sometimes you can do all of the right things and get cancer.
Yeah. Which sucks. My God, it's crazy. Yeah. Speaking, not that that's really relevant, but I had like a general question, and then I'll let you get out of here. What is kind of your opinion? So this is like one thing I could do a separate thing on this where we talked about this for like days. I feel like you would have so much input on it, but like the food system in general, like coming from where you're coming from and having all that knowledge, like what is your opinion on how it's set up? Like to me, I'll be the person, I'll say it first, like I feel like it is designed to make people unhealthy. And I guess and really that's the detriment with capitalism, is everything's done to sell money. Yeah. So they have all this stuff where it's like, hey, if we just did like they have all these like medicines and stuff where it's like, hey, maybe if you just like went outside and ran a little bit more and like ate better food, where as opposed to like, no, let's slap a medicine on this, or like you should eat this fix all food that makes you lose weight or this or that, where like I just feel like the food system in general is insane. And I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough, like in the public.
Yeah. So this is like a super loaded question.
Oh yeah, I just did 100 different.
No, but no, this is a really, really good question. So just like the most basic foundation is you should eat fresh whole foods whenever possible.
Yeah.
That's what is the healthiest to do. Not even getting into organic, grass-fed, all that stuff.
You realize such a difference too. Like even this, I had a boy come on here that makes honey, like he does honey, and like he has real organic honey. And like when I tell you, like just for the first, and I've only had it, I've been having his stuff because my dad's been having it for a while. But like I went to my boy's house the other day, and he had some of the like the store stuff in his coffee, and I'm looking at it like I'm like, this is nuts.
It looks
like, it's
different.
not even close. Yeah. And I can't imagine. I feel like almost every food, and like I do know this too firsthand. Like I fish a lot, and like when you have fresh fish that's caught, like it is so much different that like if I go to a restaurant, like I can tell right away like this is a different thing.
Yeah. And then going a step further with marketing. So the food industry from like a fresh whole food standpoint can't make these like crazy marketing claims. Like they literally are not allowed to make these marketing claims. And then other companies like almond milk or different crackers or like really anything that's like packaged are able to make certain food claims like low fat, great source of protein, whatever it is. And so like because you can make those marketing claims, it's gonna kind of hype up that product a lot more.
Oh, 100%.
And pull people in. And then people start spending all this like crazy money on like weird products that like are not necessary. And then we forget about, but if you just ate fresh whole foods, like that's gonna be the most beneficial thing. So I think the food system right now is really messy. We're seeing a lot of change.
Yeah, thankfully. I agree.
Yeah.
Have you been outside the country before like that?
I actually haven't.
Yeah.
And I want to so bad.
You would be like shocked. I don't think you actually the opposite. You would be not shocked, but most people are. Like I've been to Spain and Ireland and more or less Europe, but like I feel like I remember the first thing, this was when I was in high school. I remember going over there and we couldn't get anything, and I got a Coke, like a Coca-Cola, and even that I'm like, fuck, this tastes way different. Because they have like, and they don't have like fake sugar in it. They have like real sugar, and like everything there is, I think, like I'm pretty sure like all the chemicals they use here, like you were naming some of them, like all the dyes I think here, like they're all allowed, whereas over there they're not. So everything's a lot more basic.
Yeah, it's sometimes frightening what we are putting in our bodies without even thinking of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just crazy. Like, think about like college students. Like, this is gonna sound so crazy, but like, think about if you're like at a basement party, right? And you're playing flip cup, and that flip cup touches that floor, and you have no problem drinking out of it.
I'm bad with that. I'm like my whole claim on germs is like I feel like I have to experience them to have a defense against them. Well, just like I'm like I'm not germaphobe because I have a better like I don't get sick. I'm forgetting what the word is.
But your immune system?
Yeah. My immune system's sharp because I attack the germs.
Yeah. Well, like okay,
I'm flipping the cup.
Or like somebody gives you some like random like candy and you're just like willing to try. You're like, oh, that looks like bright. Let me try it. And then somebody puts like a new vegetable in front of you and you're like, that's disgusting. You're like,
you literally said that is like my brothers are all in high school and college and they're that way. Like, yeah, like my one brother's down in Florida and he called me the other day. He said something. He's like, dude, I had asparagus. Not that bad. I'm like, dude, it's not that bad.
I know. So like we're just like so drawn to like all these other crazy things that we have like literally no clue what's in them. And then like when we just have like a basic fresh whole food in front of us that we aren't used to, you're like, I'm not trying that.
I feel like too, like there's so many, and I don't know this as much, like, do you have a good sense when you look at like labels and stuff because of what you do, like what it all kind of is to some extent?
Yes and no, because there's so many things in food that I'm like, I have no clue what this is and I have to like keep looking all this random stuff up. But like when you're looking at food labels, kind of like how I encourage it is like, okay, I'm not going to be on the side of like, don't ever have processed food because you just as a busy individual.
It's impossible, yeah.
Yeah, but like if you look at a food label and the ingredient list is like a novel, it's like super long, I would say that's probably something that you should stay away from. Like specifically like protein bars, like that's a really good way to kind of sift through like what's a good one and what are ones that like maybe aren't the best.
I had a funny one the other day. So like my cousin, he's like looking at labels a lot now, and I'm literally, his dad's contractor, they're at my house, we're doing work to my house, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get these boys lunch. I went to Acme. I got a turkey and cheese hoagie. And then he's like, dude, you got to look at this. And I look at it. It's like 4, 5 like paragraphs of ingredients. I'm like, it's literally bread, turkey, and cheese. Like, what do we have in here that I can't even look at the label and understand it? Like, it is nuts.
Yeah. It's crazy and it's very frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, what can you do? And then one other one. This is a personal one for me. But what is like your opinion on aspartame? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
What is that? Because It's a double-edged sword because I feel like at one, it's gotta be better than sugar in general, like the normal sugar. But on the same side, I'm sure it's not healthy. But I always have the conversation with people because like I'm like a sucker. Like I love Diet Coke. Like that is like one of my guilty treats. So like I'll have one.
Same.
But at the same time, like they'll be like, "Oh, it's not good for you," and I'm like, "Dog, not everything is gonna be good for me. Like I gotta pick some fights here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say everything in moderation.
Yeah.
If you have very high levels of artificial sweeteners, 0 calorie, whatever,
Yeah.
probably not great. If you have a Diet Coke a couple times a week, I think that is better than
What about asking for a friend? What about like once a day?
I think that it's probably fine because any study that has shown, to my knowledge, any study that has shown negative side effects, cancers, whatever, from artificial sweeteners has been...
There's got to be people that are doing it crazy.
Well, it's like mostly on like rats or mice, and they are giving these animals like a ridiculous amount of aspartame or different types of sweeteners that like you really like can't humanly consume. So it's hard to like use that evidence, but I would say everything in moderation.
Like I got into like fasting recently, and I feel like that's like a weapon, aspartame, because it doesn't break your fast, supposedly. I don't know. Well, but like I'll have if I have like I'll have black coffee. Like I try to start the day, I'll have like a black coffee. I'll go to the gym and lift, and like that'll be a way. Like I try to like just not do it till lunch. Like so I'll do like intermediate. But from what I understand, it doesn't break your fast. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Could be wrong.
Can I challenge you?
Yeah.
I would say that you should have protein within 90 minutes of waking if you want to try to build lean mass.
Okay. What if you're trying to lose weight though? Is that beneficial?
I would say like overall calorie deficit throughout the day.
Yeah.
But we know for sure if you're waking up and not having food right away that because you fasted all night.
Yeah.
You already fasted.
That's so like I'll tell you this is my strategy, and you could help me out. I'm being dead serious. So Monday to Friday I'm usually really good. Usually like a Saturday or Sunday I'll have like a cheat day. I'm pretty good right now. My main thing is to just get rid of the drinking. So like even tonight, like my girlfriend's cousins are coming over and their family, and I'm like not gonna drink, and they're gonna make fun of me, but I don't care. But anyway, I'm gonna try not to drink, try not to eat bad, and then like what I usually do is I'll wake up. Like even today, I don't know what time it is, like 12 or something like that. I did not eat yet today. I try to fast until like then. I've probably done like 5 or 6 times. I've done it where I didn't fast. I fasted for like a couple days. Like I didn't do it for more than 24 hours. I usually eat lunch and then I eat dinner. And then I try not to eat like after 8 o'clock.
So I would say you should kind of... okay, so let's say that your calorie need... I don't know what it is, but let's say that it's 2,500.
How would you even figure that out if you need to do that?
Like estimation equations.
Okay.
And then like trial and error.
Yeah, I didn't understand what you just said, but okay.
Basically like doing calculations.
All right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Numbers, got
if
it.
you needed 2,500 calories throughout a day,
right.
If you're trying to build lean mass or lose weight, it's going to be more effective to spread those calories throughout the day versus getting it in like a very small window. Right. Because what we're looking to do, like going all the way back to like the beginning of our discussion, is like if you're looking to lose weight, you're looking to also improve muscle mass. The way that we improve muscle mass is getting enough protein throughout the course of the day. You're going to be able to yield a greater total amount if you get it like throughout 4 different meals versus just 2.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
So
yeah, like sometimes what I'll try to do, and that's one of the weird struggles for me if I fast, is like I used to try to do cardio in the morning, like fasted, and I just not a big morning person, and not having any like caffeine at all, I'm not good at running. I feel like I'm way better. Like if I'm gonna run 3 miles, I could do it way easier at like after I've eaten than in the morning.
Yeah.
So I've shifted away from that. Now I try to just predominantly, I wake up and I like to like lift and just get it done with. The issue though is same thing. Like say I lift at 8 a.m. and I get done at 9, right? Well now I usually would like to, when I normally lift, I'll have protein right after that. But now if I'm trying to fast till 12, I can't do it. And then I have lunch, and I don't like to have lunch and have the protein because it's like too much. So I've been trying to recently where it's like I'll have lunch, and I usually do like some sort of veggie, like rice, carbs, whatever, and then protein. And then at like 2, 3 o'clock in between that and dinner, I would try to have the protein. And then I would eat dinner. And I'm definitely snacking through that whole time. Like I like to just try the same thing, like fruits, like shit that's, well, from what I understand, whole foods. Who the hell knows what it even is? Who knows, but whatever.
Just think about like if you're fasting, if you're stopped eating at 8 p.m., and then you're not eating again until noon. How many hours is that? I don't even know.
It's like around 16, 15.
So for 15 or 16 hours, your body is in a state of breakdown. If you don't have fuel, your body's breaking down.
That's when I'm losing fat, yeah.
Well, you're probably losing muscle too.
I know. That's the issue.
So we want to build the muscle.
Yeah.
So if we take the same amount of calories that we're already eating and we space them out throughout the day more so that we have less time that our body is breaking down and we can have more
That's
time
how like my boy is too, who does like, he's like PT and he does all that stuff. And he's like shredded, so I'm kind of like, bro, you're not giving me advice on routine because you can use whatever the fuck you want, and it don't matter.
Yeah.
Like, you know
and
what
again,
I mean?
like
we have very
genetics.
different metabolisms. Like I'm in a different world than you, so I'm like, and that's what's funny. Like I'll do that whole thing all week. I'll be good, and then Saturday I'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna drink, and then I'll eat, and then it's like flush down the toilet. Yeah. It's nuts, dude. It sucks.
Yeah.
Well, it's a battle. The good thing is though, like I've lost over 30, 40 pounds like 3 times. This is gonna be the 4th time. So I know what I have to do. It just sucks. Yeah. Like, it is what it is.
But maybe this time around
I do feel way better, though.
Yeah. Like maybe this time around you do things that are more sustainable so that it's not like this.
Yeah, and I also feel like, too, the healthier you eat, like, when you do eat bad, it, like, your body's like, bro, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Like, you get exposed.
Yeah, it's like damn, dude. And then if you string a couple weeks of eating bad together, like it doesn't even really. I'm sure
your
it does,
baseline, you like lowered your baseline. Yeah. But like when you're eating healthy all the time and then you eat bad, like it's like a huge difference.
Yeah. I think ironically that's what happens to a lot of people who are not from the United States that come here.
Yeah.
They're like, what the hell? All this processed shit. But nah, it's all good. I'll let you get out of here. I had you long enough. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, we're looking forward to everybody. Obviously. You said you're doing stuff online right now too, besides Penn, right? You're the Hammer Fuel thing too. So
I'm seeing private clients.
For any athletes and stuff like that?
Mostly athletes or active individuals.
I can tell you one thing. That is one of the few referral sources I have a big access to. So I will try my best. Anyone that's sending over. The only issue is, they are all from Northeast Philly, and they are not very, I'll say, tuned into their diet as much. That's okay.
I can work with it.
Yeah, they're more tuned into like what you were saying, the weekends and stuff like that, but. It's all good. I thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. I think we're good. How long do you think that was?
Like an hour-ish?
Yeah, that was long. That might be the longest one I ever did.
57 minutes?
I feel like...
My camera did good. I started at 30 and only getting down to 12.
Nice.
When you fly it, it like burns. It burns, dude. Like really? I could probably get like 20, 30 minutes of time on a battery if I'm not flying it.
Yeah.
But
no, nutrition is like, there's so many like routes that you can go, so.
That's why I was literally like, I was not capping when I said like I could